All right. Welcome everyone to the webinar hosted by Sitedrive and Flow Modules together. We'll talk about our case of how Flow Modules together with Sitedrive and our common client reduce the throughput time of the interior phase of a residential construction project from 12 to 4 weeks, so very radical reduction. We'll go through short introductions. We'll go through why this is important. So why is it important to reduce the throughput time of construction? We'll go through the case. We'll spend most of the time on the case itself. And then we'll go just a little wrap up on how can you get started on the path towards similar results. And then that'll be the topic of our next webinar following this one. And at the end, we have a short Q&A. So please, you can add your questions in the chat as we go. And then we'll ask one more time for questions at the end, and then we'll go through what we have before we wrap up. So that is the short agenda for us today. Really quick introduction. So my name is Eetu. I work with Sitedrive. I'm responsible for sales. My own background is with lean and in different industries and with different scheduling methodologies in construction. And I'll be the host. But please, Hanna and Sami.
Hi, my name is Hana, and I'm the Chief Commercial Officer of Flow Modules. My background is in different B2B industries, including construction and then, for example, electricity distribution. And today talking about our case with Sitefactory and Sitedrive.
Hi, my name is Sami Portala. I'm Project Director from Flow Model Company and new businesses and development, and nowadays especially takt time on the construction side is quite near my heart, and so call it Sitefactory. Thanks.
Great. And maybe before we go forward, just a couple of words about our respective companies. Just a short introduction. We'll keep it very tight, but maybe starting with Sitedrive. So both of us, both Sitedrive and Flow Modules, are based in Finland. Sitedrive operating internationally. We work with construction software, with our flagship Sitedrive schedule being construction schedule management, with a little bit of a twist. So we very much focus on the practical. We focus on how the site should be managed, and then how we support the reduction of throughput time, the increasing of level of detail in the schedules. And we'll be very happy to talk more about that some other time, but this isn't about Sitedrive today. So maybe Hanna, if you want to just say a couple of words on what Flow Modules does.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, so Flow Modules is a relatively small company based in Finland, like Eetu said. We are basically out there to industrialize construction. We started that with bathroom pods back in 2016, and by today we have produced over 2,000 bathroom pods, but then we want to do more. So basically now, over the last couple of years, we've very strongly looked into, okay, what more can we do in addition to the bathroom pod? We add a lot of technique, HVAC, other building services components to the bathroom pod. But then also we look at, first we have the prefabs, then what can we do with the process? And this is where the Sitefactory story has really started, and we've been doing that for about a year now. And that's partially what today's case is about. So we'll be focusing on the Sitefactory and the doing the interior phase of a construction project, basically based on takt production methodology within the Sitefactory concept.
Great, thank you very much. Let's proceed. So why is throughput time important? And it's, for some, it might be obvious, but in construction, we are not always used to thinking in terms of speed. So throughput time means how fast we can complete the project from start to finish. Throughput time is one of the most important, if not the most important metric in, for example, manufacturing. And it's really important, not only because of the business case, I'll show that in a minute, but also because focusing on going faster forces companies and projects to figure out ways to do things smarter, and especially to get things right the first time, because the most time is always wasted in buffers, in fixing things, in going back and redoing things. So if our target is to go faster, we have to do it right the first time. So there is this perhaps an unintuitive effect with throughput time, which is that once we go faster, the quality goes up. We do better quality because we have to, otherwise we're not going to finish in time. So faster is better, and it's very good business as well. The basic idea is, so if we take a 30 million euro project, let's say it takes 18 months to do from start to finish, so the throughput time is 18 months, and the margin is around 3 million, so that'll be 10% margin. That means we get 2 million per year. And this annualization of margin is really important when we think about throughput time, because often in construction, we are kind of used to thinking of just project margin terms. So it doesn't matter if it's 24 months or 20 months or 18 months, 10% is good. The 3 million is good. But we forget that if we were to do it faster, we could use the same crew and we could make more profit in the same time. So if we were to do this hypothetical 18-month project in 12 months, that would mean our yearly margin would then be 3 million instead of 2 million. And that is a huge, huge effect because we get to multiply our margin. We get to do more in less time. And this is something that we quite often forget, or we don't really internalize how big of a deal it is, especially when you start extrapolating. So if your company has 10 projects per year, that's 1 million more from each project. So that's 10 million euros profit per year more. So it's speed is a very lucrative business in construction. And that is why we are looking at the case of how to build faster. And it's not just the multiplication of the margins. If we can complete our project faster, that means that we get to accrue less running costs because we run the site for a shorter period of time. So we pay less salaries. We have our equipment rented for a shorter duration. We rent our offices for a shorter time. There's going to be fewer mistakes, so there's less rush. So that reduces cost. If we rent the building afterwards, or if the developer rents the building, they get it available earlier, so they get more months of rent, which is quite significant. And perhaps the most impactful point for building faster is that if we use financing, if we use loan, if the developer takes 24 million loan in a 30 million euro project, every month is immensely expensive. And when you add all these together, we have looked at a single residential project. We won't go deep into that today, but maybe another time. But the key figure is for a 30 million euro project, a single working day costs 20,000 euros for the ecosystem. So the developer and the main contractor usually, depending on who has the financing, who gets the rental income, what kind of contract structure there is. But it's a nice key figure, 20,000 euros a day. If we take just the main contractor's running cost, the fixed cost there, that is usually between 5,000 to 8,000 euros a day. So even that makes a very compelling business case for building faster, especially when you add it to the multiplication of the margin, the first point. That was quite quick. We're not going to stay with this topic because we want to get to the case, but just want to drive in the point that time really is money in construction as well. Either way, I'll hand over to Hanne now.
Thank you, Eetu. Yeah, so time definitely is money, and that's basically what Site Factory is kind of based on, that idea and more. So let's look at our case, how to complete the interior finishes 8 weeks faster. In this case, it was. So our case in brief first. So this was a Finnish project named Postiaukio, funny Finnish name it has. It was an apartment building in Helsinki, Finland. It came with 7 to 8 floors in 2 staircases and a total of 61 apartments. And then it has some commercial floor area at the foot of the building, but basically residential apartments. The general contractor was a construction company in Finland called Fira, and the developer was TA, a building owner in Finland. That would basically then rent out these apartments once they were ready. Some of the cool characteristics about this project, and maybe the general contractor in this case in particular, they've done a lot of work on developing how they build these, let's say, standard buildings and whatnot. This one had, the frame structure was done with hollow core slabs. And then we also provided the bathroom pods into the building. And why that's significant is that then actually once you get to the interior phase, you already have the inside of the bathrooms done. You don't have to worry about it. Also, you have a lot of the technique, the HVAC components in this case also, for example, done. So you can move much faster into actually the finishes. And then quite importantly, the project ran on tack production, not actually only on the interior phase, but also the other ones. However, in particular, where we stepped in as the site factory, we really put the tack production in practice and really made the sort of took everything out of it that can be taken out of it. Let's put it that way. Okay, so what was actually included in our part, in the site factory part? So it was about the interior finishes, basically the list of works that were included. I put it there. So we went from floor smoothing or preparing the flooring, all the way to installing the permanent fixtures, the laminate, the doors, the trims or skirting boards, then household appliances like fridges or dishwashers, and then cleaning and whatever the finishing touches were needed. Then, well, basically what it meant was that when we came to the site, it had the whole core slabs done. It had the, I think it's called leveling in English, like the fine stuff that you put on the whole core slabs to make it even or to level it. And then the walls were painted. So in this case, the site factory part of the project then went from there on. And then in this project, basically the material procurement was done by the general contractor. So they would take care of purchasing whatever materials were needed, and that's a lot for the interior phase, right? And then they took care of the delivery of the materials into the site. And that's actually a very crucial part of to make this work. I'll talk about that a little more in the next couple of slides, but let's look at other things first. But then, yeah, logistics within the site were done by Site Factory. So basically what we did, we provided the on-site logistics, then the workers themselves, and that they did basically the works that were listed here. And then also we have Sami here, who was on the site basically as a coach for the site managers. So the site management was done by the general contractor. But Sami, knowing the concept and being very experienced in that, was there basically to help out whenever there was something to be considered or something to be solved, maybe. There you see some of the pictures from the site. So as it happened, we actually did a professional photo shoot for marketing purposes on that very site. So these are actual pictures from there, but they look very nice because they were done professionally. So it kind of happened nicely. All right. But here's the cool part before we go to it in the deeper, and then maybe this is actually the beef, as in referring to what Eetu before said about time being money. So this interior finishes phase was actually planned twice. So originally it was planned with you know, the sort of the normal way of doing it. So based on subcontractors coming in and doing their share and then going away and whatnot, the typical way of doing it. And so it was in this general schedule, it was basically stated that the interior phase needed to start at week 42. So this was at the end of last year in 2023. So the start week was fixed, and then doing it with the original schedule, we can see that the first apartment would actually be ready on week 52, so almost at the end of the year, and it would have taken 10 weeks since the beginning of the interior phase to actually completing the first apartment and saying that now this is ready. And then to complete all of the apartments, it would have taken up until the beginning of the following year, so 12 weeks since the beginning, and then we would have had the whole phase done, basically all the interior finishes done. But then we sort of planned that schedule again based on the site factory concept, and what changed basically was we changed it into tech production. We optimized for the overall flow, basically. So we really look at the production flow and chop the works into small entities that progress in a very efficient way. So again, the start was at week 42, but quite the contrary to the earlier 10 weeks. Now we actually had the first apartment ready 1.5 weeks since the start. So this was week 42 in 2023. And the picture you see there is actually, this is actual data. The project is completed and done. So we didn't only plan it, we also did it and completed it quite on the schedule. Okay. And then the last apartment was done and finished on week 45. So as opposed to the 12 weeks in the original schedule, we actually completed the whole thing in 4 weeks. And this is basically the difference, and that's where it comes that we say that complete 8 weeks faster. Well, this is exactly what we did there. Maybe a couple of words if you're not used to reading tact schedules. If you are, this is basically probably like basic stuff, but basically you see the time they're progressing horizontally, and then vertically you have the place. So basically the floors, or let's say the building, the staircase, then the floors, and then the apartments. So the way the schedule is constructed is actually at a rather detailed level. So you see each apartment, and then we used a 4-hour tact. So basically every day is split into 2. So we had like the morning and the afternoon, and then you see how the works progress there in that. And we really did hold on to that with throughout the project, and it was completed. Okay. Let's see if I get to the next slide. I do. So basically, how did we get there, and what is the difference? So maybe one of the biggest differences that traditionally, I don't know how it is in your country, but traditionally in Finland, we would do a lot of the works on a construction site based on this subcontracting model, or basically based on contracts. So typically you would have, like, I don't know, a dozen, 10 to 20 subcontractors on a site, and each of them would have like a separate entity that they take care of. So you would have like the laminate flooring subcontractor, or you could have even the skirting ports, or the curtain, what do you call them, the trim that you connect your curtains to. You could have a separate subcontractor for just that. And of course, managing all that gets cumbersome, and you need to have kind of people coming in, and then you have like a lot of contracts that the poor site manager has to take care of, and it gets messy and it gets time consuming. Also, typically you would have the materials come in or purchased by the subcontractor. So if you have a laminate flooring contractor, they would bring in the workers and do the work, but they would also provide the actual flooring material for you. And now that basically means that it's the subcontractor that takes a percentage from between. So as opposed to that, in Sitefactory, what we've done and changed is that we have one contract. So there are no more various contractors. We have one contract and basically one entity that all the interior finishes is done in. And then we centralize the material procurement within that. And like I said, in this case, it was the procurement was done by the general contractor, and basically means that whatever efficiency they gained or whatever benefits they gained from the material purchases, it went directly to the general contractor. So that's good for them. Then another thing that's a third row here, I'm not sure if activity rate is a good translation, but basically what we mean that usually when you have a long lead time or throughput time, like Eetu described it, then it basically means that you have the building that is being built, but a lot of the time there's actually no one there. Or if you look at a single apartment, there's like no one there and nothing's happening. And it could be only 10 to 15% of the time that somebody's actually working in that apartment. And now, since we shorten the lead time and kind of plan on the overall flow with the Sitefactory, you actually have someone working in each apartment for like 70 to up until 90% of the time, while that apartment is within the let's say, or that tagged zone is being worked on. And then once it's done, it's closed and it's done, basically. So that's also the difference. Like, we shorten time that we work in an apartment, but we make sure that the apartment is actually being worked on. Okay, and then maybe another important thing kind of related to all of this is that we change the cost, especially to in terms of labor, we change it to per hour. So these were hourly workers, and so it basically changes how the efficiency benefits. If works gets completed faster, then the benefit again goes to the general contractor, and we're quite able to help them with that. But it also helps in sort of like building a team. It's not like this is my entity and I spend whatever time I like in it. It's more like, well, this is my sort of normal salary and I do what I can to help the team as an overall, entity to move forward. Okay, a couple of things related to that. So as I mentioned, we did the Postiaukio project in or with a 4-hour tact. It could be 2 hours. It could be 1 day, whatever you decide. We've kind of basically, because we've done this multiple times, this was just one project. We basically established that 4 hours is usually like, it gives you a nice balance. Then if you want more efficiency, then you probably want to go to 2 hours. Also, if you're like new to this, you could start with a 1-hour tact. That's actually what we did in our first project with the Sitefactory, that we started the project with 1 day tact or 8-hour tact. And then once it kind of started flowing, then we sped up and changed to 4-hour tact, and that worked quite nicely, actually. Then the tact zone in how we planned this was 1 apartment. And now, of course, I'm sure a lot of you will go like, well, if that works, if all the apartments are the right or are the same. Well, they weren't in this project either. They weren't. So there were studios, there were 1-bedroom apartments, there were 2-bedroom apartments. I think there was actually one line that was 3-bedroom apartments. So the apartments were very much different sizes and also different shapes. And then what we need to do is we need to balance that, but we balance that looking at the whole, so the entity, like overall, that's basically the word. Overall balance is the keyword here. And basically what we could do, for example, that, okay, for tact, that means that in the morning you work in 1 apartment, in the afternoon you work in the second. So we could, for example, have put on the same day or like after one another, a small studio and then a 2-bedroom apartment. and it would balance it out. So it's also like tag production, giving like a strict kind of structure that you follow on is good, but then you don't want to be too strict about it either. You have to like balance things out so that it works. And that's what we did. Okay, another really important thing was that the site management was basically at the build every day, all day. And at the build, I mean, they were actually where the workers were working. They were there and they were available. They were not in the site office, which is basically usually the case in many projects, at least here in Finland, is that you have site management in the office and then they go visit the build. And here we changed that. So they would actually have like a desk in the middle of where things were being built, and then they would move that around if need be. Another important or like related to that is basically that because however you plan things, and one of the things that Site Factory really does change is that you put a lot of effort in planning beforehand. You plan everything at a really detailed level. However, no matter how well you plan, there are going to be problems. There are always going to be problems. And this is basically, it's all the same works, and it's the same amount of problems, one could say. However, the difference is that since you're there like all the time, and our site management did really well on this, you basically find the problems faster and you are able to react to them as soon as they arrive. And that's what kind of makes it helps you improve all the time, not like 4 weeks after, or not like the thought that you would typically have that this is what we're going to do better in the next project. Well, here the thought is really that this is what we're going to do better tomorrow. So it really changes the sort of the cycle of things. And that really helps, because then the problems don't become enormous, and they don't end up like duplicating or multiplying apartment after apartment, and then you have to go back and fix. It's quite easier to fix one apartment or one thing in one apartment, and then find the right way to do it, and do that in the next ones. So basically, it was really, the focus was in improving the production flow all the time. And this is something that might be a little difficult for the site management to really grasp, given that usually you're looking at like one thing and you're looking at, well, there's some waste here, like let's say that we have the best skirting board installation guy who could move faster and he has no work. And then you start to think that, well, he could go and do this over there and this over there, and he can, move faster, because you want to make sure that he's getting used to the full, but then you kind of mess up the flow. So here the idea is really at looking at the overall and not looking at what a single person or a single thing can do. And thanks to this, we really did complete, basically like fully finish apartments at the end of each tact. Of course, once the production had progressed enough, or the tact train had progressed enough. But then once you get to the final one, there will be a fully finished apartment at the end of each day. And finished meaning that the apartments were actually sealed. Like you would put a seal in it and lock it, and nobody was allowed to go inside. It was cleaned, it was done, it was ready for handover, basically. Okay, next I'll talk about the team, or the teamwork a little bit. Here we have one picture of from the Postiaukio site, where actually all of the workers were invited for like a kickoff meeting. And that was also another very important part, that you instead of everybody doing their own thing, everybody has their role and their sort of area that they're responsible for. But then at the same time, it's very important that people feel and understand that they are working as a team. and kind of comes back to the overall optimization. So kind of getting everybody together, explaining what it is that we're doing here, laying out all the work packages and kind of showing that, you know, this person is doing that work package and that person is doing that work package. So it really allows people to kind of understand what we are here to do together. And how to work around that. So maybe adding to the earlier list a little bit. I know this is a lot, but you can then maybe take some time afterwards if you find this interesting to really let this sink in. I'll walk through it quickly. So basically what I mentioned already is that you need to have like the resource management so that you balance out the production train. Normally you would have, because you have so many subcontractors, they would basically be juggling between several sites because each subcontractor is going to try and of course optimize their use of their workers, but that usually leads to the site managers of the general contractor kind of not knowing who's going to come in and when exactly what is going to get done, and they have to kind of keep checking in on that. With Site Factory, we have all of the workers at that one site at the whole time. So they're basically there, and once you follow the tagged schedule, it's actually quite cool to see. Here I also witnessed basically the site manager of the general contractor walking around the site and pointing out that in this apartment tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. the laminate flooring starts. In the next apartment at this clock, then this and this work starts, and here are people carrying the stuff to what needs to be done in the next one. So it's really like the site management has really everything at their fingertips because it's already pre-planned, and then it's basically like you're just following the ride and seeing when there are problems, then go and solve those. So it really does change it. Okay, then as opposed to the logistics, so typically in a normal project, at least here in Finland, what you see is that you have a worker who is responsible for doing the work, but also responsible for finding the materials and kind of like figuring out when is their turn and where to find everything that they need. So they would go like back and forth, and there would be waiting times and there would be things lost at the worst. So with Site Factory, we really completely separated the work, the actual work packages, or the work in the work packages from the on-site logistics. Basically, that means that we had tagged wagons that were only about the on-site logistics. So before you start laminate flooring, the tagged before that would be somebody else, a dedicated person, carrying all the laminate flooring packages, the exact right amount into the exact right department. And of course, that takes a lot of planning, but it's really worth it. Okay, and then the rest things I think I mentioned. So the site management needs to be constantly present at the site, and you really work at the level of hour and apartment, not like a week and a floor or even more. So really teamwork. So first you kind of you plan everything in advance. You have really clear roles, so everybody has their own work package that they work on. And then you kind of divide or put that out in what that includes. So on the side there, I have a picture of info wall, I think we could call it. This was at the build, so all of the workers could see that every day. First of all, we have the schedule there, and the workers really learned to read that too, because then they would kind of learn that, okay, I'm the yellow box there, and then you have like the time and you have the apartment. So it's quite easy then after a while to see that, okay, now at this time, at this hour, I need to be in that apartment. Because it's really quite visual, and you need to keep it visual. Another thing that was there at the bottom, sorry I didn't put a bigger picture because it's all in Finnish, but basically what the lists below there are is basically a brief explanation of of each work package. And the workers would know that, okay, this is my work package. And they would, in the beginning, they would actually take a picture with their phone into their phone, so they could carry that around. And it would make it easier for them to like help and remember that, okay, what was essential about this this work that I need to complete? Because of course these are trained, the workers are trained for the very work package that they're working on, but of course each project is going to be slightly different. There might be some characteristics that were different from this one to the earlier one. So it's really good to like list the main things that need to be done, and also the main quality criteria, and you go through that with the workers, obviously. Another really important part is that there are quality inspections at the very beginning. So remember how I showed the schedule where we started, and then a week and a half later we had the first apartment done. So that actually got inspected for the quality with the workers, but also of course with the site management, the developer, the any authority that needs to come in. That's because that's completely finished apartment, so they can actually see how the like the quality of the finished apartment is going to be really early on. But also what's important is that once we got everybody come in, and it would be basically the quality of the work would be inspected together, it would set the bar on what is acceptable and what is not. So if something needed to be fixed or done better, it was caught up at a very early phase. And then the workers could see that, and it was really like for them really kind of clear that, okay, that's not good enough. If I do it like this, then this is what I need to do, and then it's okay. And then they just go and repeat it in every other apartment in the following ones. So you really get like quality repeated. Right. I think I talked about the logistics a little bit earlier, but maybe to add to that, the material procurement, obviously, and if there are any procurement people online, then you will understand that this is like the super important, but also the super difficult part. So obviously, if you have, look, I keep using the laminate flooring guy, so let's stick with that. So if you have a laminate flooring guy come in on a certain day, on a certain time, of course you need to have the laminate flooring packages there. And if they're not there, then everything is useless. So it's really quite important that the material flow works. And maybe it's not always so easy, because there might be still in the industry this sort of like I don't know, common understanding that it's quite okay for some of the stuff to be missing, and that can arrive later because it's going to take forever for the project to finish anyway, so it doesn't matter. Well, we need to change that, basically. That can't be. So and obviously until we get there, we have to be realistic on like this is going to be difficult. Of course eventually it'll start to go on like the contract level with the material providers, but before we get there, for example, here we did use a terminal for some of the things that we knew that there might be difficulties on getting, or well, the general contractor did. We didn't do that part. There was a small storage on the site, but of course, and typically, and this also was in a very urban setting, so there was really no room like around the site or outside the site, and also the site or the lot was quite tight. So you can really only bring in so much stuff to the site. And also the site is not supposed to be a storage, right? So you need to get the stuff moving well, basically at the pace of the tact. And then it works. But you do need to put a lot of time into planning that, and we do that too. Sami here helps really the site management to kind of plan around that, and getting that to work, so that when the on-site logistic tact starts, there is actually stuff to carry into the apartments.
Can I interject for just a moment? So to really drive in the point of the logistics, so when you increase the level of detail of planning, you can build faster. That's great. but then you increase kind of exponentially the risk of especially logistics. So if you do 1 week per floor planning, usually if you have the material arrive on the site on a Tuesday, you can still finish that week. You can kind of catch up, and it's okay. So it's okay if it arrives on Tuesday, even if the work starts on Monday. If you have 4-hour tact, the stuff needs to be in the room by 7:30 in the morning, or you're going to be running late, and then you're gonna create this kind of collision with the next tasks. And that's why we often recommend maybe start out with 1-day tact, then you have at least a few hours in the morning where you might still have some leeway, even if there's a delay, or even half a week tact, because when you go into the single hours, it gets really demanding with the especially with the logistics. So again, it's super important. Sorry, you can continue.
No, but totally agreed. And yeah, that's what it is. And maybe that was a good sort of lead way to the challenges, because I mean, of course there were challenges, and there's always going to be challenges. So one of the things is that really be prepared for disturbances. It could happen that some of the stuff doesn't arrive. Then you just got to deal with that. Well, what do? Don't mess up the flow. You know, you could do, for example, I don't know, if it was only certain kind of cabinets that were missing that are in certain apartments, then you know, skip that floor or whatnot. There have been also like another thing that we have there is that the zones need to be ready. So it's not just the materials, it's also the actually the build. That's especially in terms of drying times. So the concrete needs to be dry, the paint needs to be dry. If it's not, then what do? Well, don't mess up that sort of, don't start to do something here and something there. Like make a new plan that follows your tact plan, basically. So if you need to skip a floor and basically put like, okay, 3rd floor is not dry, then let's move on to the 4th one and then finish the 3rd floor last. Of course, there's going to be a cost for that, because then the site is going to run longer. But what can you do if it wasn't dry? You can't put flooring on a wet floor, for example. And then maybe another thing that really comes into play is to understand that tact production is not only for the construction site. It's really the entire organization that needs to like understand how it changes things and align with the logic. So for example, the material procurement, once you start really like working around that, you start to find ways to help out the site. And it's not only for the site to worry about it. Yeah, and then maybe another tip that I'm sure Edu and Sami will agree on is that, first of all, you have to plan on a very detailed level. You have to document things. And for that, you probably want to use software like Sitedrive. We use it for all of our site factory projects. And then once you do the planning on a really detailed level, of course, like you saw there, we use some printouts, but we document everything back into it so that you keep learning about it. And yeah, do check for the quality, because the workers need to understand kind of what you ask from them, and then it starts to flow. Yeah. This was just a brief kind of cap that what our site factory concept is. So basically what we combine is the coaching and the workers, so that the site management of the general contractor is able to learn and kind of really step up into doing a tact project. Then we provide the tact production plan done with Sitedrive and some other templates that you can do, and then the actual works. And of course, everything is then always adjusted to the project at hand. All right. Maybe now I'll hand it back to Edu, but while Edu is speaking, if you have questions, do add those to the chat, and then we'll take them in a couple of minutes. Thank you.
Great. All right, thank you so much for the presentation, and I'm sure there's at least there's already a couple of questions, and we'll hopefully get a bit more. Before that, so just a quick kind of explanation of the logic behind this, and then perhaps a few words on how to think about moving in this direction. And like I said before, our next webinar will then be about this transition. What are the good first steps? I'm just quickly going to show this simplified maturity model for industrial construction. So this is something we use at Sitedrive to figure out together with our clients where they are now and where they want to get and what kind of benefits they're looking for when they start looking at how they want to improve their site management. What we're looking here is a matrix on 2 axes, the top axis being process. The idea is that as we improve the detail or level of detail of our planning, that means we understand the process better, so we can break it down into smaller pieces. So going from monthly to weekly to daily to hourly planning. But as we improve the process and we understand it better, we can get to maybe like a daily level of planning, and then we run into an issue. And the issue is that to start breaking down the work more into, let's say, the 4-hour or 2-hour pieces, we need to understand the product, which is the building. So what kind of materials are we using? How is that material being installed? When is it available? Do we have options that are different to build with, easier, faster, whatever it is? So as you increase the level of detail, you need to understand the product better and better. And of course, the understanding of the product is also needed to plan the logistics and the purchasing so that you don't have someone driving over to the hardware store every day before they get started. And then the steps 1, 2, 3, 4 basically is just a combination of the level of detail and understanding of the process and the product. Site factory is a great example of working in the top corner. So it's in kind of industrial terms, we're close to 1 piece flow. So we have small batch sizes. So we plan in high level of detail. And what we do at Sitedrive is we try to make the path from where we are now to the kind of construction at Site Factory easy and seamless. Because what we're looking at going from a monthly level of detail to an hourly level of detail is maybe 50 years of industrial development in one leap. So it's quite a bit to try to jump straight into the deep end. And that's why we always try to figure out what's the logical next step. Almost all of construction is in the monthly or weekly bracket in terms of the level of detail of the planning of the work, or at least the level of digital and available plans, not just what's in people's heads. So I think a good weekly level is already something to strive for. A good daily level of planning and control is definitely doable. And then when you start to constrict from that to an hourly level, then all this stuff that we just talked about and Hannah talked about really kicks into gear and comes into play. So this is the path we will be talking about a little bit in the next webinar. And to kind of summarize it, scheduling today is about task, time, and location. For most companies, scheduling means creating a quantities-based master schedule at a weekly or monthly level that is used to ensure project profitability. Basically, it's a control mechanism. It has tasks and time and location. Before we get to this industrial construction with the strictly planned logistics and everything else, we need to increase the maturity of construction sites to start managing with a schedule. Not just have the schedule something we report with, but something we use to manage the work every day. So the schedule needs to reflect what's actually going to happen, like in the pictures and screenshots Hanna showed. That means we need to standardize how we present the building, the project. We need it to be real time. We need to actually manage with it. Otherwise, it's never going to be real time. And it needs to be accurate. The level of detail needs to be accurate enough to say, what is someone going to do tomorrow? So it's an unavoidable phase and level of maturity that we need to reach. And once we can do that, once we can manage with a strict schedule, then we start adding the materials, the logistics, perhaps the quality processes. We look at conditions, plans, finances, contracts, a lot of things. And then that's when we need all this expertise. It doesn't have to take long to go through this, but there are steps. So we will get to that with the next webinar. So now for questions. I'll start with one I wrote down earlier. So for this particular project for the interior factory concept overall, have you compared how much more time or how much longer does it take to plan the project than traditionally?
Tommy, is that something you want to answer since you were actually planning here?
Yes, it's true that this takes more time. In big picture, we need more preliminary planning time than before when we do this system using takt time. In this case, it takes about 1 month more time when we do in this planning time. Reason is there that the planning goes deeper and deeper, and the planning is more accurate. For example, the schedule unit we have now 4 hours, if before it was about 1 week. That's quite big difference.
Yeah. And I think one of the kind of my learnings from different projects is that once you do it once or twice, and once you have it kind of nailed down and you are in a more of a continuous improvement phase, you don't always have to figure it out from scratch. It actually gets pretty quick. So then you just kind of go through what's different to last time. And it's not quite as big a deal as it sounds like.
Yeah, and definitely. And if I may add to that, it's actually you basically end up doing all the same planning anyways. Because, for example, inside factory, we're going to the level of like how many laminate flooring packages you need in which apartment at what time. Obviously, you need to plan that somehow, or you basically end up carrying the laminate packages in the apartment anyway. So it's a matter of kind of like doing that beforehand so that you don't have to deal with it in the middle of the site. So in that sense, it's also just moving the same work at an earlier time.
Absolutely. Yeah. So another one, a good question, I think. So the question is the one contract model the only way to dramatically speed up the process, or is it possible also with, a project involving more traditional subcontracting? I think I can, at least on my part, you guys can add if you want to add something, but from my part, most of that construction is done with the regular subcontracting processes in place and kind of the contract models. You can get to at least like a daily level without changing too much. I think the two main things to look at is the material. So if the logistics and purchasing is on the responsibility of the subcontractor, it's difficult to ensure that they have the maturity to control the logistics and have it in place well enough to succeed. And I think the other one is, especially for HVAC, electric works, for example, are the subcontractors' employees' contracts are going to block this kind of flow thinking? The subcontractors always want as much available space and location and time to work with. So they want the biggest possible batch size. If we can ensure a painter always has at least one full floor, they're going to be happy. But that is going to block a lot of work, because in reality, there's going to be 1 or 2 people working in the whole floor for that time. And then we have to kind of wait before we get up to speed with the next phases. So absolutely can be done. We actually have a kind of a different set for tips and tricks on what kind of contracts to look for and what kind of discussions. But the main thing is to already have a tax schedule before you start requesting offers from subcontractors, so you can show what you want their offer to look like, how you want them to organize their work, and then having a really frank, open conversation going throughout the project on, how many people are going to need, is this going to work out, what's troublesome, can we help out? So kind of joint collaborative planning from the start is a huge deal for succeeding with TACT, from my experience.
Yeah, definitely. And then maybe to add to that, well, like I said, anything can be done. However, maybe you want to consider things like, obviously you need, if you have a contractor doing, let's say, one work package, you need them to commit to the schedule. But then also aspects like, okay, then what do you do if they get sick? Is that going to be, of course, it depends on if it's going to be like a one man and a van kind of company, or if it's a larger one. But also if it's a larger one, is if you then somebody gets sick and you send someone else to do it, are they going to know how to do it and what to do? Because in this case, like, well, we always have like a spare resource that knows all the work packages and is able to step in to any of those. So that's really helped with, for example, sick leaves. But then you have to really plan on like around these things that, okay, what about when people don't show up? The tact or the work still needs to start at 7 a.m. in the morning. right? So some things to consider. Yeah.
Absolutely. Next one, so how to implement Tact in a not modular construction site, maybe where there's less repetition, it's less standardized, and if there's guidelines for the application in this area. So to maybe start with that again, and you can add Hannah and Sami afterwards, but to get started, so someone wise once told me they were responsible for a huge hospital project with no standardization, no repetition in Austria. And they said it was really difficult to plan in Tact, but it would have been massively more difficult to plan without using Tact, and especially to run, because you use Tact to simplify and create a structure that is easy to understand. But Tact in itself, it's important as a tool. It helps us structure and make kind of easy to understand schedules with clear flow. But even just increasing the level of detail in non-standardized kind of distinct projects can make a big difference. I've seen it happen with schools and shopping malls and so on. So once we just add level of detail, we suddenly start understanding the work and the blockers and the dependencies much better. So it doesn't have to be Tact. It's great if it is, but the most important part is just the level of detail.
Yeah. And we've done, like I said, in this project too, the apartments were of different sizes and shapes and sizes. Also, we've done different projects. We've only done this with residential because it's sort of a new thing for us. But basically, it doesn't mean that the apartments need to be the same. I don't know, Sami, do you want to share some experiences with around that? How has it been dealing with the differences, basically? You're on mute.
Yes, we have had different spaces, apartments also will be in future. We have had there example one extra guys, workers, multi-talent, who will help if someone needs help. So we can continue on time every day. We have to understand that there is different tact zone or what else, but we have to plan that how we handle that different zone area. If there is, example, more, if there's square meters more, example, laminate assembling. Some days there's 40 square meters and next apartments 80 square meters. So that's clear that in that apartments, which is so much bigger, that workers need help that days.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the key is really that you have to plan it. There's no oh, we'll figure it out on the site. There's none of that. Everything needs to be planned beforehand, and then you can actually make it. So
I think we have time for one more question, so I'm going to pick the one that's, I think, closest to my heart, and I think a really nice ending for us. So I think there's a clear kind of easy to assume that if we work this fast, if we go 1/3 from the original schedule, it's going to be rough on someone. It's going to be, difficult for the worker. But that's not the case from my experience. But maybe Sami and Hannah, maybe you have some, how have the crews kind of commented on this system?
go ahead. I believe.
Sorry, can you repeat?
How have the workers liked the concept?
When we started over 1 year ago, they thinking that what does it mean? This start time was new for them, and this hourly workers, euros per hour, was new also for them. They think that is this good for them? But now we have done 3 projects and we have almost same workers there. Maybe this is something for us that this is good for also for them. They like, because every day this workers area is ready for them, material is ready for them, the operators assembling, everything is done for them. And we have one team there. This is this Stack Time Site Factory, this is a team game. And together we win or lose. And also these workers knows this. They are no they're only one, guys.
Yeah. And I think overall, sorry, yeah. And I think overall what I've seen is that there's a lot less stress on the site because everything was planned beforehand. So it's both for the workers and the site management too. And yeah, I think that's really important too, that the point of like making it faster is not to create rush, but actually plan at a reasonable level. That you have to remember too, that you're not supposed to try and put like too much work into one work package that can be done in the tack time that you're given. It needs to be at a reasonable level, and then it flows really nicely. And I think it's a nice experience for all the people working in the project then.
I think the one thing I remember from my visits to this site is that it's quite possibly the most relaxed site I've been to, in the sense that when you walk to a floor, no one's running around, no one's yelling. There's someone working in every single room, but they're just focused on work. So I think it's a great sign of respect towards the people who do the work, that we have everything planned out and they can come in and it's ready and they don't have to start looking for things and plans and tools and so on. So in the end, I think good planning and you know, fast, efficient construction is also, it's respect. It's being respectful to each other's time and you know, planning things well enough that it can be a good experience and people can focus on their own expertise instead of, you know, carrying stuff around and looking for things. So we've used up our time. So I think even though there's plenty more things we would love to talk about, we'll have to leave that for next time. For any comments, questions, follow-ups, please give us feedback. So there's some contact information there in the top right corner for me and Hanna. And for the people who signed up, we will also send an invite to a follow-up later. And also this, I think, will become available later online for sharing. So thank you so much for your time, Hanna, Sami, and everyone who participated and asked questions. It's been a pleasure again, and we'll be back for sure.
Thank you. It was really a pleasure. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much.